All right, in continuing efforts to test out lecture capture and also to do something useful, we'd like to talk a little bit about how HTML5 will do some basic form validation. So got a set of tools here, and we're going to see what we can do. Forgive my experimentation with a presentation. So we'll start by going to good old Notepad++, and we all know what makes up a standard HTML page. Hopefully you're only watching this after you've got the basics, but we'll do it real quick. Don't forget later on your doc type, a form page, and I always like to do something. This is a form, something basic, blah, de, blah. Close the HTML. Don't forget to close the body. And whoops. And remember to save it, what you called it, where you put it. I'm going to go to desktop for now, and I'm just going to do form.htm. And now we get it color coded. So let's look at just a basic form. We're going to do form action equals, for now we'll leave it to that page, method equals get. Whenever you open it, you close it, and we'll do a standard set of input text, input type equals text, name equals first name, input type equals text, name equals last name, input type equals text, name equals city. So we just got some basic information here. Input type equals submit, value equals go for it, and just for kicks we'll put name equals submit. And we've already closed out our form. We'll also want to let people know what they're supposed to type in. First name, last name, city. So now we have three basic fields, and what we'll do is save this, and we'll start by just going to look at it. Go to our desktop, and the form is here. And I'm going to go ahead and open it in Chrome, which is here. And there I have a basic form. So obviously I could do something to make it a little prettier, but we can go and say, okay, PI, Vaughn B, fills, Charlotte, and so on. And we look up in the query string here, it's got that information. So this would be ready to process or send to another form or something like that. So the question is, what does HTML5 do for us? So I'm going to do a quick search, HTML5 form validation. And I'm going to get right into these examples. This is all from scratch. I haven't even looked at these demos, so we're going to do this together. And the simplest change you can make to your forms is to mark a text input field as required. So check that. Input type text, name equals name, required. Now that gives me total heebie-jeebies because it doesn't fit into my model of an attribute value pair. But I'm willing to forgive that for now and give it a try, and having no idea who this is, take it at face value. So I'm going to go ahead and put first name and type required. Again, heebie-jeebies there. Control S, Alt tab to the browser. Try this form. I'll leave that blank and submit. And I get nothing. Oh, I get something, right? Now when I hit enter it didn't work, but here, so just putting required makes me want to do that. But this one, I leave that blank and fill that out and hit go for it, no problem. I leave this blank, type this one, problem. So notice it's already automatically putting that message. So let's go a little bit further. So we could go, let's see, different input types. We've got email. Let's add an email input type. Instead of city, let's put name, put email there. And email. Control save, Alt tab. And notice it says type equals email, name equals email. Required placeholder. Well, you know what? I'm just going to copy this whole thing. I'm going to sort of replace the whole thing, see what it does for us. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and type required up here. The XHTML part of my brain is screaming right now. And by the way, it's Control-Shift-Tab to go back through tabs. Right, so we're there. Now I'll refresh this page. Got email. Notice it says in here, enter a valid email address. Right, go for it. Please fill out this field. Go for it. Please fill out the field. Go for it. Please fill out this field. Go for it. Please enter an email address, which means it's looking for the @ Go for it. Still doesn't like it, right? So the problem there is it just wiped everything out. Now that's not very friendly at all, right? So I do that, valid, so I put @ blah de blah, hit go for it, and ooh. So it only looked for the @ it didn't look for the .net or .com or something like that. So I would call that a pretty weak check. But it's a start, and it says validate in a limited fashion email addresses, right? And the placeholder is enter a valid email address. So it would be interesting if we could do other placeholders. So let's go ahead and give that a try. What if we put required placeholder yo last name. Control save, Alt tab, Control Shift tab, F5. Come on, F5. No, so it did not seem to put that same thing there. If I change this to say valid email address, like so, Control S, Alt tab, F5, it does indeed change that. So it's curious to me that when I put placeholder, oh, helps to have the equals sign in there. Control S, Alt tab, F5. Sure enough, it works. So in my mind, this means that we could make actually some very simpler form. We could leave out that stuff. Of course, you want to check against multiple browsers. We could leave out all that and just have the placeholder. Control S, Alt tab, F5. Okay, where's my first name? Placeholder. Same mistake. Control S, Alt tab, F5. And now I've got the form like that. So look how much shorter this form is to not have to have the prompts in front of it. That's actually pretty neat, and it will make things a lot more elegant. But that, and now we have a point where we turn it in. It won't take that field, turn it in, that field, turn in that field, turn it in, and then we put @blah.com, and now it submits it, right? So that's pretty neat, and that's built in to HTML5. So let's see what else we can glean from this article. Do Control Tab, and in Opera, it's sufficient to enter just @ Safari, Chrome, and Firefox. You need at least *@ something, which is not the case that I've experienced, because I was just in Chrome and it allowed it to submit, even though it had just the @ sign. So I don't think this is completely correct, but we're getting there. Let's see. And what other examples can we play with? The one I just cut and paste, let's see. They're calling this an attribute. right? So now I'm really curious if this will validate. I suspect it'll validate as HTML5, but obviously not something like XHTML11. So we can have a URL here. We can put the name, the input type equals URL. That's pretty neat. And we can actually require a pattern. And I don't know, it looks like it takes JavaScript regular expression. And if you're not familiar with regular expressions, you should really make it a priority to learn. So let's go ahead and look at that, since that's something I've been avoiding for a long time. So add that to my to-do list. And then we've got input types of a number and a range. So let's add an age and a satisfaction. We'll take this case and we'll put these in. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and put in the URL. Input type equals URL, name equals URL, required place holder equals valid URL, include HTTP. Now the truth is you shouldn't really have to include HTTP because that should be given if it's expecting a URL. That's a different story we'll address later. I don't even know if I need the closing slashes for HTML5 anymore. Then we've got age. The minimum I'm going to put is 8, and the maximum is 66. You're not allowed to be over 66 years old. Value, let's go ahead and I'm going to put a placeholder. And I'll do the same thing. I wonder if there is a placeholder for this slider. Placeholder equals, and let's see what happens with that. The range, the type is a range, the size is 2, the minimum is 1, the max is 5. I don't want that. I'm going to have the minimum be 3 and the max is going to be 33, and let's see what that gives us. Now notice we have all this, and so the placeholder works for these, does not obviously work for the age. It sets it as 21. The range, I go up to 66, and I go down to 8. And the satisfaction, what's interesting about satisfaction here is it does not show the numbers, right? So that's a little bit puzzling. Let's go back and look at our example. First we'll go here, size equals 2. Let's see what happens if we change that to 22. Control S, Alt Tab, F5. Nothing seems to have changed there, so I wonder if I have an error. Because these numbers clearly indicate something. The value is 3. Say we say the value is equal to 33, which is beyond the range. Control S, Alt Tab, F5. So it's at the top, so that doesn't make sense. We've got the size at 22. Let's set that to 11, which should put it right in the middle. Control S, Alt Tab, F5. And that's not quite the middle, so I'm puzzled by how that works. I'd like to see some numbers there, but let's look at the example. Notice it says include a size for the input box. Well, the input type equals range, the size equals 2, and if we look at this code, I don't see where they put the 1-5. The slider is a bit bizarre in that no values are displayed, but may be useful for more analog inputs. There are some bugs with the number input, so if you don't set a max value, clicking down with the input blank will result in a very large number. Here's how they're displayed in Safari. So the age looked good. I don't see where this 1-5 in parentheses is showing up. That's the min-max. So I have min here. Let me try it again. I'll do min1. Serves me right to mess with what they've done. Max, and I'll set the value to 3. Looks like the placeholder doesn't do anything, but I'm just going to put 3, 4, 5 to make sure. And sure enough, that looks like 3. And one way we can look at this is we can hit go for it. And of course, we have to put our stuff. Hit go for it. And it's going to want HTTP:/. And now, if I look up at the top, you can't quite see this here, but it says satisfaction equals 3 and age equals 21. So satisfaction equals 3, and I'm going to just assume that this example they gave is miswritten, because when we see 1-5 there, we don't actually see that anywhere on the page. Now, the other thing that's peculiar, and that may be a Firefox thing, we could go ahead and try that. We'll go to the desktop and open the same form in Firefox. And we do not see a range listed there. So that's kind of a drag. I'm also curious if we go, the placeholder here is for your age, even though the value is set to 21. It's too bad. Looks like there is no placeholder for that, so we still have to put age and satisfaction in front of these. I'll go ahead and put a line break there. And get rid of that one. So that's just a quick sample of how we can use HTML5 to check some things. Now I am curious. I'm going to go ahead and put doctype HTML up here. And I need to find my typical meta code, meta. And where's a good example? Let me close Firefox here and go to, I would expect a web page like this to have some good source code in it. Sure enough, I've got meta here that I can shamelessly swipe. And now we have all the makings of a somewhat valid HTML page. I'm going to get rid of this blah-de-blah and close the paragraph on the other end of my form. So hopefully this validates now. I'll save it, select all of it, go to validator.w3.org, validate by direct input, paste this here, and check it, and I get some errors. So let's have a look at these errors. Experimental feature HTML5 conformance checker, that one you're always going to get with HTML5. We're always going to get this error when we paste our code, so both of those don't really count. Bad value for attribute action on element form must be non-empty. So form action equals get. So what that means is I should be having like some actual value there. Let's go look. And so I'm actually having it call itself. I think I can do just a dot on that. I'm not positive. We'll revalidate. I went from line 5, so now I'm 4, so that's good. I think that'll still work. We'll know in a minute when we go back and check the dot. And go back to our validation. Attribute size not allowed on element input at this point. So size equals 6, min 8, max 66. So you've got input and there is no input size when type is text. So what happened in this case is we're doing the age here. So on the age right here, I can't do the size, which is interesting because the example these guys gave was that they gave it a size of 2. Or actually, they gave it a size of 6. So it really doesn't make sense. So once again, you got to be careful. So I think this person knows what they're talking about, but they're writing code that doesn't validate. So I'll go click that, and I got rid of size there. I'll save that, come back here, and I'll get rid of it up here on age. And that should bring my errors down just a little bit. So now I have 3 errors. It's always satisfying to get rid of these. Also not allowed in the other one. So, and that kind of makes sense because we already have a min and a max, so having a size doesn't make sense at all. I thought maybe it would make the thing wider or something like that. So I'll save that, go to the browser, do the same thing there, change my size 22 so it's not there, and now I should be down to 2 errors. And attribute placeholder not allowed on element input at this point, right? So that placeholder we saw didn't do anything. That was the satisfaction one. And then the last there is no p element in scope, but a p end tag seen. Right? So we can go back, and the placeholder for this one, 345, does not work. And finally, the P is at the end of that form and the beginning. So maybe we'll get rid of the P altogether. See what happens. Revalidate, and bada boom, bada bing. We're good. Copy those same changes here. There's no placeholder for the range input type, and the paragraph is not required. We save that, and now we're good, and we've demonstrated multiple validations. One other thing that we can do is look at the format that we want the HTTP to come in, and it says required pattern HTTPS ? That's all nonsense. In fact, I would suggest that all it should have in it is at least a dot. So you could put coke.com, and your programming should address that. So in your code, you should look for that. I do not think you should require that. In fact, one thing that I would do is go in the code, and I will put value equals HTTP : // so that's there automatically, but in reality you shouldn't have to do that. Or we could put that right at the beginning, HTTP : // let's see how both of those look. And so in this case it says HTTP there, but it also says it in there, and that also gets rid of our placeholder. So they could start with that and so on. So we'll change our message to match that a little bit. In this case, it doesn't even make sense to do URL, because we want it to be something else, and the placeholder will be i.e. coke.com. We'll save that, come back around, F5. Come on, F5. Not doing it. Required placeholder equals i.e. coke.com. Value is HTTP : oh, we still have that in the value, and the value is blank. We'll take that out altogether. So the name is URL. We put HTTP in front of it. Save, F5, and it already says there. And so you'd have to be kind of a moron to go HTTP : It doesn't mean it's not going to be done, but that's something you can deal with in the code to debug that. So here we go, and I added these. These are not related so much to validation, but they get the job done. Now, from a lecture capture standpoint, notice that you've seen the computer, you've seen my pretty face. Here I am, and hopefully you've learned a little bit. You've also seen the desktop and file management. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about code. And there we have it.